Gentlemen, stand by. We are getting ready for our first poll closings of the night.
The polls are closing now in 9 key states. 98 electoral votes are up for grabs. This hour could impact everything.
We're going to win the state of Georgia. We're going to win 4 more years.
Voters have made their voices heard.
It's the most important election in our lifetime. It'll make all the difference here in North Carolina.
Which states went red? Which states went blue? Who have they chosen?
We're going to again win Ohio.
You can make all the difference in Ohio.
And it is 7 o'clock on the East Coast, which means polls have just closed in half a dozen states. The most closely watched state at this hour is Georgia, which President Trump almost certainly needs to win if he's to secure a second term. As of this moment, too early to project a winner in this crucial battleground.
It's also too early to make a call in Kentucky. Meanwhile, Biden will defeat Trump in the Commonwealth of Virginia, according to our decision desk.
And the former vice president will also win in the state of Vermont. No big surprise there in the early part of this evening. We will need to look at more data before we can make a projection in the state of South Carolina. And in the state of Indiana, where Trump has enjoyed a lead over Biden in the pre-election polling, also not quite ready to make a call in Indiana.
Let's turn now to the Senate, control of which is very much up for grabs tonight. The most interesting state to watch at this hour is Georgia, the only place in the country that has not one but 2 Senate races on the ballot. Either of those could help determine control of the chamber. But here's the kicker. We might not find out who will fill either of those Senate seats until January. That's because of a Georgia state law requiring candidates to win more than 50% of the vote tonight or face a runoff election 9 weeks from today.
And in the regularly scheduled Georgia Senate race, incumbent Republican David Perdue is battling Democrat Jon Ossoff and Libertarian Shane Hazel. As of this moment, it is way too early to project who will get the most votes there, much less whether, if anyone, will exceed the 50% level they need to avoid the runoff. It's a similar story in Georgia's special Senate election, where Republican Senator Kelly Loeffler is facing challenges from a variety of candidates, including Reverend Raphael Warnock, a Democrat, and Congressman Doug Collins, a Republican.
We cannot yet make a call in the South Carolina race between Republican incumbent Lindsey Graham and Democratic challenger Jamie Harrison, who managed to throw really a scare into Graham during this hard-fought campaign. A lot of money going into that South Carolina race. Could be a long time before we actually make a call in that race.
So with those first closings under our belt tonight, let's break it all down with our panel. Chris Wallace, Britt Hume, Katie Pavlich, Karl Rove, and Donna Brazile. Welcome back to all of you. Karl, let's bounce out to you with a look at some of what you see here in the early going at 7 o'clock. Not any big surprises at that point.
No, and not really much data either. You're right about Georgia. Georgia is going to be an interesting case to watch because it is absolutely certain that we're going to have one runoff, the Kelly Loeffler Warnock Collins race, because you have to have 50% of the vote, and there are 13 candidates on that ballot, whereas there are only 3 in the race involving incumbent David Perdue. And you're also right about the South Carolina race. A lot of money, and illustrative of a big strength the Democrats have shown in this election, and that is their ecosystem for small dollar fundraising that they began 16 years ago in called Act Blue. Harrison, who is the former state party, Democratic State Party chairman, has raised over $50 million in the third quarter and running against the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. So money doesn't always result in determine the outcome in a race. Both of these men have sufficient enough money to spend, but the idea of having over $50 million in a state with 3 million people and probably 2 to 2.5 million voters, pretty strong set of numbers that Republicans are facing in every single Senate race. There's not a single competitive race in which a Republican senator or a Senate candidate is outraised his opponent.
Well, it only took a few seconds, but the Fox News decision desk can now project President Trump will defeat former Vice President Joe Biden in the state of Kentucky. Not a surprise there. But the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is up for election there. He was leading going into today. We'll see where that race heads in Kentucky as far as the Senate Majority Leader's fate. Donna, your look at tonight, what you're looking for early here as we start to get the actual vote tabulations coming in.
Well, I was sitting here telling Carl about Virginia, and I said Arlington, Prince Williams, Loudoun, and a couple of counties would be coming in early, and of course they've already called it. But now Georgia. Trump carried Georgia by 5 percentage points in 2016. And the last time, as you all know, that the Democrats carried this wonderful state was in 1992. But there's been an increase in younger voters, non-white educated voters, and I think the key tonight is looking at the suburban vote. And if suburban women continue to turn out in large numbers in favor of the Democrats, Georgia is going to be an interesting state to watch once all of the votes are tabulated.
Katie Pavlich, let's go over to you. Your thoughts as we get these first tallies in, and we've got Kentucky in now. We're looking at about 26 minutes away from the next round.
I think going forward tonight, looking at ticket splitting will be interesting. In Arizona, Martha McSally has been down, but President Trump has gained in that state. In Georgia, the state that you just called, or did not just call, excuse me, but we're discussing right now. David Perdue, Senator Perdue, skipped the last debate with his opponent, Jon Ossoff, to campaign with and for President Donald Trump. He is depending on President Trump to carry Georgia to get him over the finish line. In Michigan, it's interesting because they're counting on every last vote with the ground game there for the Trump campaign. The Michigan Secretary of State has said that 100,000 of the absentee early voting mail-in votes have been counted. There's 170,000 to go in Detroit. They also registered 18,000 new voters today, and those voters cast their votes in Democratic strongholds like Detroit, Ann Arbor, and another place in Michigan. And so interesting to look at that number for the president as he tries to take back Michigan as he won in 2016. But in terms of Georgia and other states like it, those Republican senator incumbents are really depending on the president to pull them over the finish line.
Carl, it's very early in the night, but what we're looking at is our voter analysis survey, and as these raw vote totals come in, these numbers from these states. But can we, looking at what we see now, say that this is likely not a landslide either way?
Well, I'm not certain that we can deduce that from the polling that we've had and the election returns thus far, but I suspect that's exactly going to be the case. Both sides have been revved up. You generally have a blowout when there's one side that's revved up and another side that has become dispirited, either because of internal divisions or simply a lousy candidate. We've had two campaigns here that have focused on revving up their bases, and so I think it'll be a big, huge turnout, and I think it will be relatively close, closer than I think either side thinks. You're at the moment in a campaign now where if you think you're going to win, you think you're going to win strong. And I know that's the attitude among a lot of Democrats.
Are you working the refs? Are you working the reporters at this point? What's happening?
I'm sorry?
If you're in the campaign, are you working the reporters saying this is what we're seeing? I mean,
first of all, you're getting 1,000 phone calls and emails and text messages from people saying, what do you think? What do you think? How do you think it's going to turn out? And it drives you absolutely insane. and then you're sitting in some little room somewhere trying to absorb all of this data, all this information. I remember one particular night when a guy kept walking around the room with a cigar, and his father said, "Don't worry, Senator, it'll be all right." And I was in the presence of two presidents of the United States. So at one point in 2004, I ran out of assistants. I had two great assistants, Israel Hernandez and Susan Ralston, and I had them busy doing weird things. So I looked around the room and said, who could I bring over here and have help me, because I had a computer that showed all the target percentages or all the ballots, what we were getting, but I needed somebody when I would bark out the name of a county to tell me how many votes we needed as our vote goal for that county. And I looked around the room. No, I wasn't going to be 41. It wasn't going to be Barbara Bush. I said, Condi, get over here. And Condi Rice sat next to me for the next hour and a half or 2 o'clock until about 2 o'clock in the morning as I barked out, Lucerne County, Pennsylvania, Hamilton County, Ohio, and I had a very talented assistant who went on to greater things in life as Secretary of the State.
Now he just barks. Now he just barks for whiteboards.
Exactly,
he needs more whiteboards.
So, Chris Wallace, one of the issues that we talk about a lot in campaigns is likability. And one of the comparisons that we see some of in this Fox News voter analysis is the difference between Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden on this issue. And, it was fascinating in 2016. Voters didn't really love Hillary Clinton or President Trump. So they had to decide between two characters that they weren't all that excited about. It's a little bit different this time around.
Absolutely. We in the poll, Honest and Trustworthy in 2016, the final poll, Donald Trump, 37%, not very good. Hillary Clinton, 33%, even worse. This time, Donald Trump still stuck at 37% on honest and trustworthy, but Biden is up over 50%. And when it comes to being liked, he is liked by a majority of Americans. The president is still underwater in that regard. Now, look, it's a tough job. And in fact, it's interesting. Trump's campaign ads talked about the fact, look, he's a tough guy, but you need a tough guy to be president. So they've tried to make a virtue of that. I just want to, before we pass on, and we will, talk a little bit about Virginia. I find it astonishing that Virginia has become such a blue state, because the fact is, I was looking back, you know, this is a wonderful machine. I know it was slow to get to it, but I did. Between 1964 and 2004, that's 40 years, Virginia went Republican every time. The last time that it went for a Democrat was Lyndon Johnson, and then Bush 43 in 2004. And since then, it has gone for the Democrat every time, and more and more and more. And so a state that was red became purple and now has become deep blue. And this, you know, these are the demographic changes you're seeing in parts of the country that a state like Virginia now, neither candidate even went to it. It was off the board.
Trump went there once.
Okay.
But you're right.
It wasn't competitive.
No.
And it used to be a real, first of all, it was a solid red state, and then for a while it was a swing state. Now it's as blue as New York or Connecticut or one of those states.
You know, Britt, quickly, the national popular vote, we just looked at that screen. It's very possible that, you know, again, like Hillary Clinton did, Joe Biden could win the national popular vote, but President Trump figures out a way to win the Electoral College and piecing together these battleground states to 270.
And that's the very scenario for which stores are boarded up all over the place, because there's a widespread belief among certain partisans in this country that the Electoral College is a relic of a bygone time, that it's anti-democratic and improper and should be abolished because it permits that the person who gets the most votes should win the election regardless. Of course, we are not simply a pure democracy. We are a constitutional republic, which accounts for the fact that we give the weight to the states, and we don't have, I mean, the truth of the matter is that the popular vote is a stat. It's not how you keep score in this contest. You keep score by electoral votes, and those are done state by state. That's how it's always been.
All right, gentlemen, minutes from now, polls closing in battleground states of Ohio, as well as the very important North Carolina, a state that will play a decisive role tonight.
This as we watch the Senate races in Georgia, in Kentucky, where Mitch McConnell is against Amy McGrath, South Carolina, Lindsey Graham, Jamie Harrison, all of that coming up. Trey Gowdy is going to join us after this.
This week on the...
Looking for dinner made easy? Move over meal prep and make way for pre-chopped and pre-portioned ingredients. Hit the road hard to follow recipes and say hello to easy breezy meals. Peace out, pile of dishes, and welcome easy cleanup. Well, hello there, Home Chef. Home Chef oven-ready meals, pre-chopped and pre-portioned recipes without the prep or mess. Visit homechef.com for $60 off. Home Chef, delicious meat simple.
Hi, I'm Daniel Hemrick, 2019 NASCAR Cup Series Rookie of the Year and driver of the number 8 On Deck Chevrolet for Junior Motorsports. One thing that I know is that race cars and businesses need to run fast. And my friends at On Deck know speed. They have a quick business loan application. If approved, you can get funding in as fast as one business day. A business loan from On Deck can help you move quickly on opportunities or deal with roadblocks that may come your way. If you need a business loan, go to OnDeck.com to apply today.
Mood changes, behaviors, or suicidal thoughts. Antidepressants can increase these in children, teens, and young adults. Elderly dementia patients on Latuda have an increased risk of death or stroke. Call your doctor about fever, stiff muscles, and confusion, as these may be life-threatening, or uncontrollable muscle movements, as these may be permanent. These are not all the serious side effects.
This is where I want to be.
Talk to your doctor and ask if Latuda could make the difference you've been looking for in your bipolar depression symptoms.
Non-valvular AFib can mean a lifetime of blood thinners. And if you're troubled by falls and bleeds, worry follows you everywhere. Over 100,000 people have left blood thinners behind with Watchman. It's a one-time, minimally invasive procedure that reduces stroke risk and bleeding worry for life. Watchman. It's one time for a lifetime.
Brush aside the doubters, the naysayers, the noise. Oh, and lint. You're not ready for gray, so brush it away in 5 easy minutes. Just for men, mustache, and beard. Be the better man you are, and look the part.
Imagine feeling fearless at the dentist. Imagine strengthening enamel while preventing cavities 70%. Act anti-cavity. Stop imagining. Start acting. And get anti-cavity protection with our dye-free iced formulas.
7:14 on the East Coast. The first polls have closed in 6 states. President Trump has taken Kentucky. The former Vice President, Joe Biden, is the winner in the Commonwealth of Virginia and also in Vermont. Still too early to call Georgia or Indiana.
Important to know, as you see the vote totals come in, one of the two candidates could be leading in the vote total, but based on our analysis and the decision desk, they're making a call based on the projections, and those calls will be checks on the bottom of your screen. The race to 270, that's the magic number, 270 electoral votes. Right now it's 16-8. We have a long way to go. More polls are set to close just moments from now, including one of the most watched states of the night, North Carolina. Mark Meredith is on the ground at Senator Thom Tillis's headquarters in Mooresville, North Carolina. Mark, good evening.
Brett, good evening to you. President Trump won North Carolina 4 years ago fairly easily. Right now, things will look a lot more competitive in this state compared to what we saw last time around. What's interesting is we've seen the president and the vice president make multiple stops, kind of barnstorming this state recently. But the question is, how effective will that be? Only because North Carolina has a very aggressive early voting program, with most North Carolinians going to the polls within the last several weeks. They were the first state to mail out absentee ballots, and then for half of October, they allowed people to go out to the polls. So we'll wait to see what happens with the president and those 15 electoral votes. The other race that we are watching also closely, including many pundits, is what's happening where we are, where incumbent Republican Senator Thom Tillis hopes to have a victory party tonight, but he's waiting to find out whether or not he'll be going back to Washington to serve a second term. He won 6 years ago by less than 50,000 votes. This time around, Democrats are pouring a lot of money into this Senate race. He's facing off against a former state senator and an Iraq War veteran. This is a race where we have seen some nasty ads on TV, but also one that they feel is very important for both parties if they are going to maintain control of the Senate. Who will decide that? The other question we've been wanting to see out of North Carolina is, how will this early voting program go? The state has said they are very confident in their process, but we have seen a small number of precincts decide to have to be able to stay open just a little bit later. They were supposed to close at 7:30. Now they're going to be given an extra 20 to 40 minutes, depending on where they are. A small number of issues, things like receipts not being printed correctly or not opening the polls exactly on time this morning, like they were supposed to. The state says, though, things are going very smoothly, but they wanted to make sure these specific precincts, a small number of them, would have the option to make sure every vote gets counted. We'll let you know as the results continue to come in. Brett?
All right, Mark Meredith in North Carolina. Mark, thanks.
So we are just a few minutes away from our first look at battleground North Carolina and also Ohio. Let's get some thoughts from former Congressman Trey Gowdy as we wait. Trey, good to have you with us this evening. Obviously, your home state of South Carolina is one to watch very closely this evening as well. What's on your mind tonight?
Lindsey's race, obviously, for professional and personal reasons. I talked to him yesterday. I think he feels good. The first congressional district, Martha, Tim Scott made that district look really easy for Republicans. It never was. Mark Sanford won, but then he got booted out in the primary, and Republicans lost. So I am interested in what happens at the coast down in Charleston.
You know, we're looking at some of this voter analysis and digging into the numbers in the various states. In South Carolina, for example, President Trump leads in men 57 to 40, but he's losing with women 52 to 45. When you look at a place like Georgia, it's really upside down. Men 51-46 for President Trump, but women 56 to 42. Do you think that the president tonight, looking at these numbers in the Trump campaign, is concerned about that suburban women vote across the country?
Well, I hope he was concerned well before tonight. I mean, the dominant thing I've heard, Brett, from the women in my life who trend conservative, not exclusively, but they trend conservative. They care very much what your policies are, but they care about the manner in which you communicate those policies. The President Trump who showed up at the second debate, if he had shown up at the first debate, I think that gap with suburban women would be smaller, frankly.
Yeah, we don't talk about that with Chris Wallace on the panel here. We don't.
Sorry.
We've told the no first debate comments at all.
Sorry.
Okay.
There was no first debate.
All right. Anyway, moving on to the second debate. What do you think as you look at these early numbers, as you feel kind of the sense of the country? I mean, do you think Trump can pull this out?
You know, Brett, I never thought I won a trial. I never thought I won an election. I'm a pessimist, so if I'm going to be surprised, I want to be happy and surprised. It just feels to me like the president has to pull a straight flush. But in his defense, I felt that way in 2016, too, and I wound up being dead wrong. So it just feels like it's a gauntlet Republicans have to win. They've won one popular vote out of the last, 6, 7 presidential races? So you put a lot of pressure on pulling that straight flush in the Electoral College. And if you have one hiccup, then you're through. You're done.
So, Trey, the other vote that we're watching very closely is the Black and Hispanic vote. And just taking a look at some of these numbers in Georgia from our voter analysis, 92-6, Biden-Trump among the Black vote in the early going here. And, also some support, though, a little bit better for the president, 33% among the Latino voters. What are you watching with regard to that tonight?
Just whether or not Republicans can make inroads there. I mean, obviously, Tim Scott is from South Carolina. The RNC had a concerted effort. There's ads that are targeted, both urban radio ads and television ads targeted towards that community within the American family. But, Republicans are going to always struggle if we are the party of white men. You got Mia Love, you got Tim Scott, you got Will Hurd, but 2 of those 3 are going to be out of politics after tonight. One's already out. You can't lose any group 90-10 and expect to be successful in politics.
Thanks, Trey Gowdy, thank you so much. We'll check in with you later.
Yes, sir.
Let's go to Shannon Bream, more digging into the voter analysis. Shannon?
Okay, Brett, so as the polls start to close, both candidates have Georgia on their minds tonight. We've been talking about that. Bill Clinton was the last Democrat to carry the state. That was back in 1992. Now, 4 years ago, President Trump won by 5 points. Tonight, the Biden campaign thinks they can win the state back, sending former President Obama to stump there yesterday, trying to fire up the base. Black voters traditionally backed the Democrat candidate, and today is no different. In Georgia, they are coming out strong for Biden. Also working for Biden, newcomers to Georgia. More than half of voters who've lived in the state 5 years or less are in his corner. But President Trump, plenty of fans there in Georgia, too. Seniors, a group that many thought the president was losing over coronavirus, they're actually breaking for President Trump in Georgia. And conservative Christians, despite criticisms of the president's name calling and insults, white evangelical voters are solidly behind the president. This year has been, for many people, all about the pandemic. In April, after he urged states to reopen their economies, the president called out Georgia's Governor Brian Kemp for opening too early. A majority of voters agree with Trump's stance at the time, saying they think it's more important to limit the spread of the virus, even if it hurts the economy, rather than limit further damage to the economy, even if opening back up increases the spread. An even greater majority favors a mask mandate. About 3 in 4 voters say they're in favor. Now, we still have 2 very important Senate races in Georgia. We'll continue talking about those. But first, we want to jump over to the critical Senate race in North Carolina, where Democrats are hoping to flip and pick up a seat. It has been a wild race there. Just a month ago, a sex scandal forced the Democrat, Cal Cunningham, to go on the defensive. That very same day, Republican Thom Tillis, the current incumbent, was diagnosed with coronavirus. So both campaigns have been scrambling ever since. Cunningham was probably not going to win over North Carolina's white evangelical voters, and this scandal certainly did not help. They are backing Tillis by more than 60 points. At the same time, voters who say the pandemic is the most important issue facing the country, they favor the Democrat by almost 50 points. This is one of those races that could decide control of the Senate. So we asked voters, was the party that controls the Senate important to your vote? Almost half said that was the single most important factor to their vote in this race. And those voters are split down the middle. So it doesn't get any closer than that. We will continue to crunch the data, but for now, back to you guys.
Okay, Shannon, thank you. We've been talking about the probability meter, and we have, looking at the state of Georgia, the vote total is coming in. You see the probability now 59% to Joe Biden. Again, here is the thing with the probability meter. This is the early vote that we're getting out of Georgia. This is likely the early vote that dumped at the beginning of the polls closing. Remember, we talked at the beginning of the night that is likely 6 out of 10 for Joe Biden in a lot of these states. Donald Trump, however, is leading, according to our analysis, on the day of vote, which comes in over the night. So you're going to see this probability meter shift throughout the night. Right now, it's at 59%. In the raw vote total, Joe Biden is leading at 56%. And we're going to see that through the night. Chris, you had something on Georgia?
Well, just looking at our voter profile analysis, which is a poll that was taken, an exhaustive poll, 100,000 people across the country in Georgia. And I think this is going to be true in a lot of states. If Joe Biden is elected president, it's going to be on the basis of women. There is a big gender gap. Women in Georgia, 56 to 42, Biden over Trump. On the general question of the country, and this is always a very telling one, especially for an incumbent running for re-election, would you say the country is going in the right direction or the wrong direction? 61 to 39, wrong direction over right direction. And then finally, which is the most important issue facing the country? If you think the economy is the key issue, 77 to 20 for Trump. If you think the coronavirus is the key issue, 72-26 for Biden. The difference is 39% think the coronavirus is the most important issue. 26% in Georgia think the economy is the issue. So we don't know how it's going to turn out, but you look at the internals of these polls, and you can certainly see a potential path to victory in Georgia for Biden.
We got to hit a break, Britt, but go ahead.
Real quick, just looking at the percentage of men and women voters. In Georgia, as Chris suggested, women 53% of the electorate, men 46%, Virginia 54-46 women, South Carolina 55-45 women, Indiana 52-47 women. So if they are across the country, if they are the significantly larger cohort of voters, that's going to tell us something about the outcome, because women have had a lot of trouble with Donald Trump.
All right, stand by.
So live look as the polls are about to close just outside Cleveland, Ohio. We are about to get our first look at numbers coming out of that state, as well as North Carolina and West Virginia. More straight ahead from Fox News headquarters and Democracy 2020, the presidential election.
I started noticing losing my hair in my 20s.
I was like, yeah, my hairline is definitely starting to recede.
Like, is this happening to me now? What really stuck out about Roman to me was the simplicity aspect.
I was able to talk to a doctor on the phone.
I could just do it right from home.
My relationship with my hair is fantastic. We're good friends now.
It makes me feel a lot more confident.
I love my new hair.
The things I love about Roman are the simplicity, the confidentiality, and the fact that it works.
Hey, Guy. Hi there. Welcome to Hims.
Should have done it years ago, and I feel like the young stud that I always imagined I was.
Outstanding product. Works above and beyond our expectations.
This has been a life changer, even in just a few weeks.
Featured in GQ, Playboy, and Men's Health. Find out what all the buzz is about.
Go to forhims.com/ED and get started with a free online visit while supplies last.
What makes me proud to be an American is that it was founded on an idea that freedom matters.
Democracy 2020, it's in your hands.
The most common side effect is diarrhea, sometimes severe. If it's severe, stop taking Linzess and call your doctor right away. Other side effects include gas, stomach area pain, and swelling. Change your thinking to IBS-C. If your constipation and belly pain keeps coming back, tell your doctor and say yes to Linzess.
Zach? Zach?
You mean Jack?
Hey, Ellen.
Hey!
Your name?
Tim.
At the Cincinnati Insurance Companies, we know how hard you work to make a name for yourself.
Jack.
That's why we operate on a first name, first priority.
Hey, Beth.
First to be there for you basis. Because your name is what you stand for.
Tim, good to see you.
And at Cincinnati Insurance, we stand for you.
When you can't watch, listen. Get the latest news, business, and news headlines on SiriusXM. Anytime, anywhere. Fox News Audio on SiriusXM. America is listening.
Welcome back to Fox News coverage of the 2020 election. We've made some calls tonight. The vote totals are coming in. A lot of these states have the early vote coming first. You're going to see on the bottom of the screen the percentage that you see on the screen, precincts in, and that's how that vote total is tabulated as it comes in.
In a couple of minutes, we're going to start to get a look at North Carolina and Ohio as well. Obviously, two very important states that both sides really need to secure tonight. They spent a lot of time in both of them, Joe Biden and President Trump, trying to win over voters. We're getting some interesting indications here in some of these states in terms of the way that women and men are breaking down. And, you know, last time around, President Trump won with white women against Hillary Clinton. In the early states that we're looking at some of these breakdowns in, that's not the case in some of them tonight.
Right. It's important to note that it's the voter survey that we've taken around the country, and it gives you a snapshot of where people are. But as the real vote total populates, that's where our decision desk makes the calls. And they're not going to make a call unless they feel certain that a state's going to go one way or another. We saw that in Virginia. There's not a lot of vote in. However, where the vote is, and our voter analysis survey gave them the ability to call Virginia for Joe Biden. Seconds away from the next poll closing here on the East Coast. It is 7:30 p.m. on the East Coast, which means polls have just closed in 3 more states, including 2 considered must-wins for President Trump's reelection. First and foremost, Ohio, the biggest prize of the hour, 18 electoral votes that frankly are considered more crucial to President Trump than Joe Biden as far as getting to 270. Candidates locked in a tight race in the Buckeye State. The Fox News decision desk will need a lot of time probably to analyze more voting data before declaring a winner there.
However, it's not too early to project that President Trump will easily defeat Joe Biden in the state of West Virginia, one of the most pro-Trump states in America, so no big surprise there tonight.
Also in West Virginia, the Fox News decision desk can now project that Republican Senator Shelley Moore Capito will turn back a challenge from Democrat Paula Jean Swearengin.
North Carolina polls were set to close at 7:30, but they are going to remain open in a handful of counties until 8:15. We'll get you an update on the crucial presidential and Senate races there as soon as we can. Some delays that kicked in North Carolina, which we heard about a bit earlier in the night. So nothing alarming there, but they got a late start.
The machines in some of the precincts did not work, and they had to kind of start late, so they're going to finish late, 45 minutes. There you see the race to 270, 16-13. We've got a long way to go. Bill Hemmer is back with a look at where we stand tonight so far and what you're watching, Bill, at the billboard.
It is early. Brett, Martha, good evening again. We can show you, however, here in the Southeast, there is data here in Georgia and data here in Florida. To our viewers at home, sometimes this data pops up in real time, so you're going to be seeing it at home the same time we see it here. So this is live on the air mathematics, okay? Down here in Florida, here's what we had. 63% of the votes now reporting. By the way, the panhandle is open until 8 o'clock, so another 28 minutes on the clock until polls close there. But East Coast time here, 7 o'clock, Joe Biden with a slim percentage lead here. Remember, we talked about 7 million votes cast early in state of Florida. They've tabulated about 7 million on this map here as well. So come on down here. We'll look at Miami. We'll look at Tampa and up here in Jacksonville. This is Miami. We have been told the president was doing better in this county based on Hispanic voters and African American. That appears to be the case. The reason I say that, at 54-45, favored Joe Biden. Just go back 4 years ago and see what the comparison was. Here we were in 2016. Hillary Clinton won the county with 65% of the vote. So Donald Trump clearly is in the battle here in Miami. Come back to 2020. I'll pop out here. As you come up here to this is Hillsborough County. This is Tampa. A fair amount of votes in, about 500,000 votes here. Joe Biden with a 12-point lead on Donald Trump. Why is that, and how does that rate with 4 years ago? Let me pop back here to 2016. Hillary Clinton won the county. Again, the vote totals are very similar right now, so they might be getting very close to maybe 90% or plus of the total vote in Hillsborough County. She had 53.5% of the vote. Joe Biden at the moment is doing slightly better than Hillary Clinton at 55.4, so we'll watch that. The other thing I saw up here, this is Jacksonville, Duval County, Joe Biden here with the lead over Donald Trump. I was watching this a moment ago during the commercial. This is razor tight 4 years ago. We'll see how this breaks down. Again, more vote to be counted in Jackson. You see that right? Oh, there it is. just then, that county right there from 2016 was red. Pop up here to Georgia. We talked about the counties to watch east of the Mississippi River. I know Brett and Martha, we've talked about this before. This is Atlanta right here in the surrounding counties. This is Fulton County, sort of this bottle shape here. This is Cobb County. And the reason I'm focused on that is because there are suburban voters there, white voters, some African-American too. It's going to get a measure as to whether or not Donald Trump is hurting with suburban voters. There's only about half of the vote in here in Cobb County, Georgia. From 2016, it was pretty close. You know, Hillary Clinton, about 2.5 votes there. So we'll see whether or not the president can cut that gap and cut that margin here throughout the night. You guys also mentioned that Ohio closed a moment ago. Let me go to the Buckeye State. We'll see what's happening here. Well, that's what you got. All right, there's not a lot of data coming in from Ohio. Part of the reason that could be state law allows this total advance early 3.4 million early votes cast, but they could not start processing them in Ohio until today, and right now they're doing the tabulation. We are told in Ohio that the first vote that will be given to us will be the in-person vote as of today. And then after that, we'll see the ballots that were cast prior to Election Day. A lot of these states, they have different laws, they have different rules, and they can, we'll bounce around and we'll follow the law as best as we can here. I just come over here to Kentucky. The reason I would do this only is because northern Kentucky here, it borders the Ohio River with Cincinnati. So let's see what's happening here in counties like Boone County. Right now, the president, 66%. Pop on over here to the east, Kenton County, 56, almost 57%. Not a ton of votes in here yet, but they're working their way up. Go back to 2016. These were counties where President Trump won 64% of the vote. I'll just come over here to Boone County, 72% of the vote. Here's another one, Campbell County, 63% of the vote. So as the numbers come in, we'll be able to get a better sense as to whether or not the president is, come back to 2020, whether or not the president is meeting his margin from 4 years ago. If he is, he's in for a good night. If he exceeds that, a really good night. If he's below that, there will be concern in the Trump team tonight as to whether or not they can pull this off in 2020. So we're watching it. Pennsylvania's coming up in about 20 minutes or so, guys.
You know, Bill, we know that in the Panhandle, the polls close in about 24 minutes, but some polls have closed in other parts of Florida. Obviously, down in Florida, you have key places like Sumter County, where the Villages is, that both campaigns have focused on. Do you populate, is there vote total coming in from those places?
There is a vote total. There's not a percentage breakdown. In other words, you can look at this, Brett, 67% in Sumter County. You're right. Villages, seniors, how are they breaking right now? Do they have concerns about COVID? Are seniors voting differently in Florida than they are perhaps in Pennsylvania? President's at 67% of the vote, about 58,000 raw votes. From 2016, he was at 70% with 52,700 raw votes. So that's about, quick math again, forgive me, but it's about 70,000 plus here from 2016. This year, we've got about 70,000 votes in here, too. So what we cannot see through the projections we're getting from the Associated Press is the percentage in this county of the vote. You can find that on the Secretary of State's website, et cetera. But this only lets us know that we're pretty close to 100%, but not entirely there. If this is as far as Donald Trump gets in Sumter County, and that's where he was 4 years ago, he's got some work to do in that part of Florida. But again, it could be offset in different aspects. I can tell you on the phone with the Trump campaign throughout the day, they're confident about Florida. They say they're in the game in Georgia, North Carolina as well, Ohio also. What they will hedge a little bit on is Pennsylvania. They believe it's too close to call. And then as we work back into the upper Midwest here, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, some of the campaign on the Trump side argue they're in it in Minnesota. We'll find out through the course of the night here. But Wisconsin and Michigan, they were hedging their bets a little bit. They believe those states, at least the folks I talked to, were too close to call. More coming up shortly.
All right.
Well, Bill, let's go down to Georgia real quick. Is that where you wanted to go?
I want to go to North Carolina, but let's go to Georgia, and then we'll go to North Carolina.
I thought I was reading her mind. Georgia, around Atlanta, those areas, the suburbs, Fulton County, DeKalb County.
Yeah, at the moment, no information in here yet from DeKalb County, which is east of Atlanta. No information yet in from Gwinnett County either. This is Fulton County. This is what it's given us right now. Donald Trump's got 161 votes and Joe Biden has 146. I guarantee you there are more people on the sidewalk tonight in downtown Atlanta than the votes coming in there. So it's early in the night for Fulton. But I really think this is something to watch. Cobb County, how does it break? There's a lot of data that's coming in there so far. I'll just pop around here and just give you guys a better sense. Fayette County, minimal. Over here in Henry County, just a few numbers here around Atlanta. So we've got a long way to go in the state of Georgia as it stands right now at 7:38, 7:40 in the evening. Martha, you mentioned North Carolina.
Yeah, I just want to mention before you go to North Carolina from Georgia, apparently at the State Farm Arena, they were delayed 4 hours because of a water pipe burst in that room. And they don't expect, as you say, Bill, that Fulton County will come in for quite some time. That's home to a 10th of the voters in Georgia in that Atlanta region.
Time. And it's going to give you a measure of suburban votes in the northern part of the county. Yep. It's going to give you a measure of African Americans who live in the city of Atlanta itself. So we'll watch this. North Carolina apparently had about a half dozen precincts that got started late earlier today. So they have extended the vote there for about a half hour, 45 minutes. We thought we'd be getting numbers at 7:30 East Coast time. That's not the case. Look to them to come in around 8 o'clock, 8:15, and we'll see what this balance is for the state of North Carolina so far.
But one of the things that we're all looking at is whether or not President Trump will be driving up these numbers in these rural areas, because that was one of the early indications in the evening in 2016 that the balance had shifted and that they were finding voters that they, that nobody had really campaigned to all that much, frankly. And they have said all along, Bill, that that is the key to their success again tonight. Is there any indication in anything that you're seeing that that's happening? I know you just showed us one county where he was falling short of that in Florida.
Yeah, this is North Carolina from 2016. It's a great point, Martha. It's sort of the area that we're focused on. Donald Trump flipped 6 counties in North Carolina from 2012 to 2016. This is one of them. This is Robeson County. He was nearby there in Fayetteville just a short time ago, 52.5% of the vote from 2016. For comparison's sake, to let you know how well he did here in 2016, look where you were in 2012. Barack Obama had 59% of the vote in that county alone. So this year, in 2020, sorry, I'll go to 2016, does he match that? Even at 20,000 votes, if these races in these states are this tight, that makes a big difference in the outcome for the 15 electoral votes in states like North Carolina. Another one here. This is white. It is rural. It is a part of the country that Donald Trump has been holding these campaign rallies at for some time. It's Rutherford County. It's right next to Asheville, North Carolina, the western part of the state. 74% of the vote. Again, it's only 21,000, but that can make a big difference in a race that's very tight. 74%. Does he meet the margin of that percentage this year? Does he exceed it or does he get below it? So we'll see shortly here when this map starts to fill in North Carolina. Coming up shortly.
Bill, one more. Let's go to Ohio. First of all, you're right. The Trump campaign feels confident not only about Florida, but Ohio. And looking at our voter analysis survey, they have reason to be about some of the numbers that we're getting out of there. You're from Ohio. Yes. You know it well. But you look at those counties along the border to tell a story.
I tell you, 4 years ago, guys, when we were here, that was the indication to me that this was going to be a very close race between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. I'll tell you what I'm talking about. Up here in northeastern Ohio, these were deep blue 8 years ago. You know, you think about Ashtabula and Trumbull and Mahoning. That runs right along the Pennsylvania border. Who are these voters? They're blue collar. They're steel workers. They've been voting Democratic for generation. And in 2016, look what they did. They flipped. These are significant places here when you get a 60-40 split in Ashtabula down to Trumbull, 53%. Mahoning County, where you find Youngstown, the president did not win that county, but he came as close as you have seen for any Republican in decades. And Brett, I knew at that moment that Donald Trump was in this campaign when a lot of people thought he was out from 4 years ago. So how do we look at that now across the border here in Pennsylvania? All these counties here, he was just here in Butler County over the weekend. He had some 50,000 people turn out, 61,000 raw votes there from 2016. But you pop around here and you look at his margins, 76.8, 68.5, 80% in some of these counties. He needs these numbers to offset the following. This is Philadelphia down here. This is Pittsburgh and Allegheny County. Philadelphia clocked in 560,000 votes for Hillary Clinton in 2016. So you got to offset it in the countryside if you're going to overcome that in the city of Philadelphia.
All right, you do that better than anybody. So we're going to come back a lot,
Okay.
and we'll be checking in throughout the night. Thank you, Bill. We have a race to call, and that is for the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell. We can now project that he will win that Senate race against Amy McGrath, the Democrat. She spent $73.4 million on this race. We're looking at it not being that close. And Mitch McConnell will go on to another term. We just don't know whether he will be Senate Majority Leader or Senate Minority Leader by the end of the process tonight.
Yeah, during this process, though, Amy McGrath did manage to put some pressure on Mitch McConnell that he has not felt in prior races. But we see tonight that he has a very decisive win in Kentucky. And, you know, he has been at the helm of one of President Trump's most fervent errands, which has been loading up federal judges and the federal bench with conservative judges, and just put Amy Coney Barrett on the bench as well. So, I mean, obviously this allows Mitch McConnell to, in one way or another, depending on what happens with the presidency tonight, to continue in his role as a senator. But whether or not he will be in that majority leader spot is a big, big question tonight.
You know, we should introduce Dana Perino and Juan Williams.
Let's do that.
With Chris Wallace and Britt Hume. Dana, this is a big win for Mitch McConnell. A lot of people thought this was the one. This is the one that's going to go down. And Senator McConnell is going to lose to Amy McGrath, but it's not going to be close.
You have to say, look, I think that she raised $100 million. You don't see Republicans out there clamoring for campaign finance reform because they raised this much money, but he took it seriously, especially early on. But I think that you have to look at the Democrats and say, for Chuck Schumer, the candidate recruitment in that race was really not very good. Plus, think about what Mitch McConnell was able to close on. The confirmation of a new Supreme Court justice in Amy Coney Barrett, and she's a very popular person across America. The other thing is that you called West Virginia for Shelley Moore Capito. She was the first woman to represent West Virginia in the Senate, and she will be returning there for another 6 years. I think when it comes to candidate recruitment, when you look at Mitch McConnell, what he was able to do versus what Chuck Schumer was able to do, even though there are very close races to watch tonight in the Senate, that Mitch McConnell probably wins when it comes to that score.
Juan, let's bring you in to the conversation here. It makes me think about South Carolina, about Lindsey Graham's race against Jamie Harrison. Lindsey Graham also probably got a bit of a lift from the judiciary hearing, which he ran as the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Your thoughts as we look ahead to that race, which has been very tight for Lindsey Graham?
Well, again, you know, to me, I don't see that race, that, you know, the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett necessarily driving votes. I think it is an accomplishment for Mitch McConnell, clearly. But I think that when you look at that, the question is, are people now turning out to say thank you, or are people moving on and taking that for granted? And I think in large part, what we're seeing tonight is people are responding to, in the case of Mitch McConnell, someone who has tremendous power in Washington and who can bring home the goodies for Kentucky. And in the state of South Carolina, I think if you look at the advertising that Lindsey Graham's been running, he's made it clear that he is part of the tradition, part of the legacy in terms of leadership, strong leadership in that state, and making Jamie Harrison out to be the newcomer. And usually in these races, Martha, people want to be the outsider, they want to be the change agent, not in the case of Lindsey Graham versus Jamie Harrison. But I just want to go back for a second to that Kentucky race, because I think so much of that was driven in the internals on the Democratic side by what happened with the police killing of Breonna Taylor. And what you get then all of a sudden was a tremendous divide among Democrats in terms of who the nominee would be, and a black candidate coming up strong against Amy McGrath. She just barely held on at the very end of that Democratic primary process. But I don't think that she was positioned in terms of the fact that, you know, Mitch McConnell brings home the bacon in a big way for the state of Kentucky, and it's hard to go up against that and that legacy.
Yeah, Britt, I mean, he's a survivor.
Yeah, he is, and I would say this about him. I don't go back to Lyndon Johnson. I wasn't on the beat in Washington quite back that far. But I go back a ways, as does my colleague Chris here. And I think Mitch McConnell is the most effective floor leader in either party that I've ever seen. I mean, in his quiet and understated way, he has been extraordinarily effective, and he has this sort of ability to know what the rules are at the right moment and to stay
And he's
around the corners.
negotiated the Trump administration pretty well.
He did, and I know for a fact that he has privately thought that Trump made everything harder, but he's worked with him effectively without completely yielding to him. And you know, the loyalty to him among his Republican colleagues is extraordinary, and to that one can attribute his ability to keep the votes together for these judicial nominations, which was job one for him.
And look how he handled these judicial nominations, the justice nominations. When it came to Merrick Garland in 2016, as soon as Barack Obama named Merrick Garland, he said, he is not going to get a vote. He's not going to get a hearing. It's just not going to happen. Conversely, when Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away, he immediately said he's going to get a vote. He wasn't sure whether it was going to happen before the election or not, but he was going to go full speed ahead to name this. And by doing that, he kind of forces everybody in his party. He plants the flag, and they have to rally around it. He's really, I agree, an enormously effective Senate leader.
And he will be in the Senate for 6 more years. Again, we don't know which leader position at this moment.
So polls closing minutes from now in a big haul of states, including Florida and Pennsylvania, 2 states that could very well decide the presidential race. Election night 2020 continues after this.
Did you know you can go to libertymutual.com?
If you've got a military, first responder, or law enforcement background, GovX.com is for you. You stepped up to serve our country and community. GovX delivers the deals that you've earned. GovX is the only site built exclusively to honor your service. Members save on epic brands and the gear they need for on and off-duty lives. Signing up is fast, easy, and totally free. Those who've served in uniform deserve the best savings on the internet. If you qualify, visit GovX.com and join a community of patriots and pros. You've earned it. GovX, savings for those who serve.
We know you've got your hands full at home.
I'm building a spaceship.
So Instacart is here to help make grocery shopping a little easier. Choose which store to shop from, what items you need, and how you want them. And a shopper will safely deliver them contact-free in as fast as 2 hours. Because between teaching, cooking, and parenting, you could use one less job to do. Go to Instacart.com or download the app to get free delivery on your first order using the code ORDER-TODAY.
I love Made In. I love what Made In represents. With the product, you could tell that there's extreme craftsmanship.
You would think a pan is a pan until Made In came along, and I went, wow, these things are something better.
The pots and pans that I'm using on an everyday basis are gonna create wonderful products in my kitchen.
Those are the pans that we use at Alinea. We're gonna have the best pans in the world at one of the best restaurants in the world.
These folks, they don't have time to go to the post office. They have businesses to grow, customers to care for, lives to get home to. They use Stamps.com. Print discounted postage for any letter, any package, anytime, right from your computer. All the amazing services of the post office, only cheaper. Get our special TV offer, a 4-week trial plus postage and a digital scale. Go to Stamps.com/now and never go to the post office again.
Are you sick and tired of looking and feeling heavy? ProBioSlim promotes healthy digestion and helps you lose weight. Patented probiotics ease constipation, gas, and bloating, while powerful EGCG burns fat and calories. Unleash your potential with ProBioSlim, the #1 probiotic fat burner at Walmart.
Guys, are you tired of frequent nighttime bathroom trips? Well, Force Factor Prostate helps reduce urges to urinate, plus fully empty your bladder and promote a normal prostate size. Don't settle. Choose Force Factor Prostate from the #1 fastest growing men's health brand at Walmart.
Welcome back, everybody. We are minutes away from getting results from over a dozen states, including the crucial state of Florida. Always extremely important in any presidential race. And the equally watched state of Pennsylvania is also just moments away from closing their polls tonight. Mail-in voting has been a particularly contentious issue in Pennsylvania. President Trump has been openly critical of the U.S. Supreme Court and its ruling in that matter. Let's go to Philadelphia now and hear from Aisha Hasni. All right. All right, we're waiting for Aisha. We're going to get her back in just a moment. But obviously, the issues that have been plaguing Pennsylvania are these decisions, not only by the Supreme Court, but by their state Supreme Court as well, which allow them to extend the date to which they can continue to accept votes. And they don't necessarily have to be postmarked by November 3rd. Even if that postmark is a little bit fuzzy, they're going to assume that it was sent before November 3rd. Also, signature is a big issue in Pennsylvania.
This is a big issue because there's not a federal standard.
Right.
Each state does it differently. So whether they match the signatures on the absentee ballots, whether the postmark has to be legible on November 3rd, take a live look in Philadelphia, and they're going through these ballots, and it's kind of mesmerizing to look at this, but this is what they're doing. They're going through all of this, and this is going to be a count in Philadelphia that we're told is going to take days.
Yeah, you got to open up the envelope. You've got to take out the envelope on the inside. Everything has to be signed. Everything has to be postmarked. This is a process that we've just never seen at this kind of magnitude, 100 million votes.
Let's get back to our panel. Karl Rove, Donna Brazile, Katie Pavlich. Karl, okay, we're starting to see some more vote totals coming in. We're starting to get more population of our voter analysis survey. What are you seeing?
Well, we're starting to hear some interesting things. One county, a large county, important county, Fulton County, expected to have 140 to 170,000 voters. This is downtown Atlanta, if you will. And instead, they had about 15,000 people vote as of 5 p.m. today. Obviously, a lot of people took the opportunity to vote early, but even the local election officials found the number of voters who showed up today in an area where Biden has to run strong to win that state. They found a anemic turnout. If this is repeated in states like Ohio and like Michigan and like Pennsylvania and all across the country in these battleground states, this is not a good trend. Maybe it's limited to Georgia, but what you see in one part of the country tends to be duplicated elsewhere.
One of those places had the water main break, so they had a little bit of an issue. Donna, when you're looking at states like Florida, which is getting ready to close fully in the state, we're starting to get some numbers, as Bill pointed to. States like Ohio, are Democrats encouraged by those two states?
Absolutely. When you say Florida, I almost had PTSD again. But luckily I don't. Look, Bill just showed us Duval County, which strangely enough, Joe Biden is keeping it very competitive. That's very important. That's Jacksonville. Sumter County, that's not a blowout. I'm also looking at Pinellas County. I mean, Barack Obama and Joe Biden carried it in 2008. Hillary Clinton lost it in 2016. So there are a lot of votes to come in Florida. I'm also watching Ohio, along with, of course, North Carolina, where there are still a few counties that are waiting to close their polls. So the night is still early. I'm still optimistic. There are multiple paths, and until I see one road close, I'm still very optimistic for Joe Biden.
So just an update on Fulton County. Apparently, the Georgia Secretary of State is saying that they did have a pipe break and that it slowed things down, but that they do expect that they're going to have results from Fulton County tonight. As I said, it's a tenth of the vote in Georgia, so that will be a very important element to the count. Let's go to Katie Pavlich. Katie, looking at Florida, it looks very tight at this point. They've got 48% of the precincts reporting there, but obviously, the Panhandle is very significant to the Trump team. What are you hearing?
Well, first in Fulton County, they are going to keep those polls open until 9 o'clock to give people the chance to cast their votes if they are still in line or had an issue with the water main break earlier in the day. But down to Florida, if Joe Biden doesn't turn the numbers around in Miami-Dade County, he's in for a rough night, and President Trump is on his way to a victory in that state which President Trump needs to win tonight. He can't lose Florida in order to win. But you had a number of Biden campaign surrogates over the last week sounding the alarm about the lack of turnout among Black and Latino voters in Miami-Dade. You had James Carville begging for enthusiasm for Joe Biden in that county. And so we'll see if Joe Biden can make up the numbers in that county for the rest of the night as we continue to get those votes in. But overall, the Panhandle, of course, is Trump country. And we'll wait to see if those voters turned out as the Trump campaign is depending on and believes that they will.
Yeah. Brit Hume, Florida.
with regard to the elderly vote in Florida, which is critical in that state. There was a Quinnipiac poll about a month ago that had Biden up like 15 points with the elderly. It was widely thought that the elderly vote in that state was going to swing toward Biden. So far, 65 voters 65 and older, Trump leading by the narrowest margin, 50 to 49. Now, obviously, he'd like to be winning by more than that. But that's a lot different picture than we were getting not very many weeks ago, which way the senior vote was going in Florida. So that might be encouraging to the Trump campaign.
Think about how many stops that both campaigns made in Florida, in North Carolina, in Georgia. Those three southern states are going to be really crucial. And we're getting ready for the next poll close, and we may have some more calls in just seconds.
The polls are closing in 18 states. 175 electoral votes are up for grabs. What happens in this hour could define America.
We are going to win my home state of Florida. We win Florida, and it's all over.
The people are choosing. The votes are in. Who will cross the threshold? Who will be the president of the United States of America?
It may come down to Pennsylvania. And I believe in you. I believe in my state.
If we win Pennsylvania, we win the whole thing.
It's 8 o'clock here in New York City. Polls have just closed in another 16 states. Let's begin with the big prize, Florida, the biggest electoral prize of this hour, and a must-win state for President Trump if he is to secure a second term. The Fox News decision desk is currently poring over a lot of voting data from the Sunshine State, a lot of actual votes, plus what we know from voter analysis, but it's not ready to project a winner there.
Very tight, as expected, in Florida as we wait for the rest of that to come in. And while Joe Biden could win the presidency without Florida, he would have a much tougher time without Pennsylvania, where both candidates have focused so ferociously over the course of the last several days. It could be a while before we know who wins the Keystone State. It could be days or weeks, perhaps, before we know what happens in Pennsylvania. It didn't begin to process their mail-in vote until today. They've also got some counties that they won't even begin counting until Wednesday. They're going to go through the day of vote in Pennsylvania, and then in those 7 counties, they'll start opening envelopes and beginning the mail-in vote.
I'm more optimistic. It is not, however, too early to call the winners in a dozen other contests, including the District of Columbia. In fact, let's start with our nation's capital, liberal stronghold. Biden will easily defeat President Trump, according to our Fox News voter analysis. Not surprisingly, Biden's home state of Delaware will also vote decisively for the former vice president. Biden will also coast to victory in Massachusetts, according to our Fox News decision desk.
And the reliably blue state of Rhode Island will also be added to the Biden column tonight. Ditto for Connecticut, where the former vice president will coast to victory as well. Biden will also prevail in Illinois, where the president has long railed against the violence in Chicago. He will also pick up the perennially blue state of Maryland, according to the decision desk. And finally, Joe Biden will win the state of New Jersey. So a big blue run for him in those states, none of which are surprises tonight.
President Trump also racks up some electoral votes at this hour. The Fox News decision desk can now project that Trump will easily win the state of Alabama. We're also watching a Senate race there. The president will also prevail in Mississippi, according to the Fox News voter analysis. You will not be shocked to learn that the Republican president will breeze past his Democratic challenger in the state of Tennessee.
Fox can also project that President Trump will win Missouri, which has now voted Republican in 6 consecutive presidential contests. The president will also beat Joe Biden in Oklahoma, according to our decision desk.
One of the few states where we cannot project a winner at this hour is New Hampshire, where we need to analyze more voting data before making a call in the Granite State. Finally, let's turn to Maine, one of the 2 states that does the winner-take-all use the winner-take-all method for allocating electoral votes. They do not. Actually, they split out one. Our decision desk can now project that Joe Biden will win 3 of Maine's 4 electoral votes. But again, there's another one that's split out. We don't have enough data yet to determine the winner of Maine's 2nd congressional district, which represents the state's 4th electoral vote. that importance of that one vote really could loom large if the national electoral contest comes down to the wire. The other one that splits it out, Nebraska.
So Maine is also a state that has a very closely watched Senate race at this hour. Republican Senator Susan Collins is trying to fend off a challenge from Democrat Sarah Gideon in a race that could help determine overall control of the Senate. It is too early to make a projection on that race at the moment. The other big Senate race of the hour is in Alabama, where incumbent Democrat Doug Jones faces a strong challenge from Republican Tommy Tuberville. Too early to call that contest, which, if Tuberville prevails, could be the first Senate flip of the night, and that would leave them with only 3 pickups in the future if they were to do that.
And there you see the balance of power. Fox News can project that Republicans will keep their Senate seats in Tennessee and Oklahoma, while Democrats will keep their Senate seats in Illinois, Maryland, New Jersey, and Delaware. All of the other Senate races in the states where the polls have now closed are still too early or close to call. The same for gubernatorial races. We'll bring you any surprises in that as we get them.
So let's take a look at the electoral map right now. You've got 56 for President Trump, 91 for Joe Biden. It's almost as if, you're playing the what if game, and we're easily starting to fill in some of the ones that you punch in that are givens essentially across the map. And the battleground states obviously are going to be blank for some time this evening. If we could just pull up North Carolina and Ohio again, just to demonstrate what we were talking about earlier tonight, about how some of these states are going to look very red or very blue early on in the evening, but we're still waiting for more data, obviously, to come in these places, because the mail-in vote leaned heavily towards Biden, and the walk-in vote today is, you can see 65-31 in North Carolina, and we'll get Ohio up there as well. But this is where we want to be cautious.
Right. And you see less than 1% of the precincts in, and you see the numbers on the screen. And in the states that we can make a projection, that's based on our voter analysis and where our decision desk knows that state's going to go. Bill Hemmer is back with a look at where things stand tonight. So far, some key states. We talked about Florida. We're talking about Pennsylvania all night long.
Yeah.
Bill?
Hey, guys, good evening again. I just let our viewers know, again, this is real-time data. You're seeing it at home the same time we're seeing it here. In Florida, you got 82% of the vote tallied now, okay? Talk about the panhandle. It closes at 8 o'clock a moment ago, as we mentioned. So these counties that are gray will start to fill in, and indeed they are red. I would expect this, based on 2016, a lot of Trump votes to be right here in the panhandle. As it is right now, 83% of the votes in. President with a half-point lead now in the state of Florida. You've got upwards of 9 million votes cast. And just for a comparison vote, your advance vote was around 9 million too. And Florida's been counting all day, so this runs right along with what we sort of anticipate in terms of raw numbers in that state. Again, about a 0.7 lead there. The Trump team felt very good about this state about midway through the day today, and they continue to feel that way now. We'll see whether or not that holds. I mentioned Georgia here. I'm just going to pop up the East Coast here. We're only about 11% of the vote in Georgia. President with a slight lead there, but often it takes time to figure out where the vote's coming in from. Remember, this is Atlanta, Fulton County. So some more votes are starting to come in from Atlanta. Joe Biden, 58,000 raw votes. President Trump with 13,000. That's going to change throughout the night here. While we got the time here, you guys mentioned North Carolina. Been a little stubborn, only because they had a bit of a delay. It's supposed to be 7:30, got laid about a little bit past 8 o'clock. So as it starts to fill in here, not a ton of data here. We can start poking around. Well, this is Robinson County. We just talked about this a moment ago. President, big numbers there from 4 years ago, and right now too early really to get a measure. Well, the president's going to win this county. We know that. We can say that. By what margin is something that is still outstanding. You guys mentioned Pennsylvania. Here we go. It is now closed, and this is the amount of data that we have from the Keystone State. Hey, it's early. I told you it was early, right? So indeed, it's early. While I've got you here, let's go over to Ohio. And if you guys got questions, go ahead and jump in here. But this is now 35% of the vote is in now in Ohio. And so we got a ways to go right here. But Joe Biden, remember at the early night 2 hours ago, we said this thing's going to take different turns and twists. It could be diabolical in a sense, because the vote could come in heavy blue and it'll shift to red or vice versa. So we'll be patient with this and see
All right,
how
don't
it
look at the
unfolds,
map.
you guys.
What's the 5th county down on the left? No, I'm just kidding. But show us where you're looking. Like, where are you focusing on
A couple
this
of
vote?
things here. This Cincinnati down here, Hamilton County, Franklin County is Columbus, Cuyahoga is Cleveland. So those are your 3 Cs. One thing, Brett, we talked a couple minutes ago about the northeastern corridor here. This is Trumbull County now. Okay, I'm looking at raw votes here. Don't have the entire vote for the percentages for the total vote for the county. Joe Biden's got 33,000 votes. Donald Trump has 24,000. Do the quick math, right? 55,000 votes. From 2016, in that county, they had 90,000 votes cast, and Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton by 6 points. So you've got a ways to go right here, but based on this, Joe Biden seems to be in a pretty decent poll position at the moment. We'll see what other precincts clock in here in a moment. So I'm watching that. I'm watching Cuyahoga. Pop down here to Hamilton County. This is Cincinnati. Just a few votes in right now. There's a big congressional race there. Steve Chabot's up for re-election. It's gotten a lot of attention down here in the 1st District. Here's what I would say. This is Warren County. This is suburban Cincinnati. This is where people who grow up in Cincinnati move when they become adults, and they want to have a larger piece of land and a larger home and raise their family. There's been a lot of suburban flight into Warren County for the last 20 years or so. So it gives us a measure right now about how these people are thinking. Donald Trump, 50,000 raw votes. Joe Biden, 36. How does that compare to 2016? Donald Trump got almost 70% of the vote in Warren County. Right now, he seems to be doing rather well in Warren County, and we'll see him again as the vote starts to trickle in. So just punch up here. Delaware County is north of Columbus. It's early. You pop down here to Franklin County. This is one of these counties that a lot of people have their eye on for people who are leaving the Republican Party. So we'll keep an eye on that. Just for comparison's sake from 2016. All right, 63. It was 2-1 from 4 years ago. And at the moment, at this stage in the night, Joe Biden is faring better, I should say. Raw votes, just quick math in my head here, guys. I'll say 350,000 total votes in Franklin County so far. 4 years ago, you're in excess of 600,000. So we've got some votes to still come in this part of Ohio.
Bill, let's take another look at Florida. And I just want to take a look at some of the voter analysis questions on coronavirus from Florida voters. And the question is, say if you have had this experience during the coronavirus pandemic, you or someone in your household has lost a job or lost income. 56% of the people who said yes to that question are Biden voters. 41% of them are Trump voters. Have you lost a close friend or family member to the virus? Among those who said yes, 65% are Biden voters and 32% are Trump voters. These are Florida numbers. And obviously, Florida, fared well in the beginning and then got pretty hard hit by the virus. Your thoughts on that and where we might see counties that would be responding that way?
I think it's a very interesting point you make, Martha. And we can throw this map around for COVID as it affects the world and also how it affects the U.S. So I'll show you that throughout the night. You're right about Florida. It peaked in July, but then they started to get a handle on it. So, how are these folks feeling down here in Florida? I think the example we used in a moment was the seniors in Sumter County and how they feel. So, all right, so far, the margin for Joe Biden is slightly better than what Hillary Clinton did 4 years ago. Right? Slightly better, just about 2 points better. Is that enough to flip the state? Doesn't appear to be right now. At 85% of the vote tallied here, the president's increasing his lead since the time we came on the air 4 minutes ago. So if that trend continues, you could in all likelihood make a call here in Florida shortly. Again, the panhandle is going to fill in. And as I mentioned a moment ago, this is deep red country here. And I would expect it to be the same case just coming up here in a few minutes when we tally those up, Martha.
So, Bill, we are competing with you on the desk here. We have now our own board
Go for
at which, we're talking about coronavirus. You look at this heat map and you look at where this is a major factor in this country, and it goes from yellow to deep red. I mean, the country is essentially red or light red across the board. Florida is in the deep red category as far as cases. So coronavirus is hanging over this entire election. And the question is whether it's the lockdown and the economy, as President Trump closed with, or Joe Biden saying that the president's not handling it effectively?
Yeah, it's a good question. This is October 5th in Florida on the heat map, right? This is what they were doing. Go back a month prior to that. September 7th, it was rather red. You look down here at the change per weekly. Let me just throw you back a couple months here and see where we were back in, let's say, come on, Mr. Machine. So this is June 15th, right? This is Florida. Pretty good condition at the moment there. Change in a week, though, was up 19% in cases. All right, so now I'm going to fast forward through the months, okay? Mid-July, you're up 37% in change per week. That is a massive amount of a COVID explosion, you could call it. August 10th, though, you're back down to 9%. Then come into September, you're down to 4%. Come into, you see the trend here, right? You know, we talked about them peaking, and then as of today, even though the map shows red, you're at 4% of an increase of cases from month to month. What that shows is that Florida had that spike and they got it back under control. What we can't say, I don't think for the moment here, is how all that factors into this vote and whether or not it's a determinant factor as to whether who wins this state. But at 86%, we can keep talking here, guys, and we're going to see these numbers change. And since we've come on the air here, Donald Trump continues to increase his lead in Florida.
That's a lot of vote, 86% of the precincts in.
I would agree, yes. I think you're exactly right about that, Brett. If you follow this vote throughout the day, Democrats had a clear lead in that early vote that came in before today. They were well in the lead. Donald Trump won the state by 100,000 votes in 2016. There are some observers throughout Florida today that are looking deep into these numbers, and they think he can ultimately win this state perhaps by 3 points. If that's the case, you're up 300,000 votes in Florida, and then we would move to a different contest, perhaps up here in Georgia, to see whether or not the Southeast stays red in 20.
That's the first part of the Trump path, is the Florida part. Bill, we'll head back in just a minute.
Thanks, Bill. So as the results continue to come in tonight, let's bring in Tucker Carlson, host of Tucker Carlson Tonight. Tucker, great to have you with us. It's 8:15 on the East Coast. What are your thoughts as you look at what we've heard so far?
Kind of not what we were told to expect. I'm especially interested in Florida. It does look like the president's got a very good shot of winning. But I'm interested in this because elections tell you what the parties actually look like. Not what you imagine they look like, but you find out who voted for them. So the coalitions become really clear. And in Florida, the population center, of course, Miami-Dade County, biggest county in the state. Hillary Clinton 4 years ago got 334,000 votes there. An hour ago, with 84% reporting, Donald Trump had already outstripped that by more than 100,000 votes. Now, Miami-Dade is 70% Hispanic. That's not what you would have expected if you've been watching for the past 6 months, this attempt to racialize everything, to make Trump the greatest racist in world history. You would expect, whether you buy that or not, you would expect that that would depress the votes for Trump in Miami-Dade County, but the opposite happened. He's doing better there with non-white voters than he did 4 years ago. Now, I'm not exactly sure why that is. I suspect, the BLM message is a mixed blessing. It doesn't appeal to all voters in the same way, and it turns some off, and some of those are Hispanic voters. But we'll figure it out in the coming weeks. But the obvious lesson is this is not what people predicted. This morning, the New York Times, Nate Silver, had the president's chances of winning Florida at 31%. So you have to kind of wonder, how did that, these are smart people, they have access to all the data, they've thought about this deeply, it's their job to think about it. How could they be that wrong on the day of the election? And again, I'm not quite sure I know the answer, but at some point, we, the media, need to pause and ask ourselves serious questions about how we're thinking through what's going to happen and how we present it, because our predictions affect outcomes to some extent, and they also, of course, determine our credibility. People judge us based on our predictions. And so something really went wrong in the way we predicted a number of these races. And let me just restate something really quick. Florida is the future of the country, not simply because it's multi-ethnic, which obviously it is, but because that's where people are moving.
Yeah.
Florida and Texas are two of the states that have the biggest inflow from other states, Americans moving from state to state. They're moving to Florida in huge numbers. And so it does tell you something about where we're going. And I think if you're a Republican or a Trump voter, it tells you something more hopeful than you expected.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the key is that Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, and we're starting to get more and more of that vote in. Florida, the Trump people feel confident about at this hour.
Yeah.
But Georgia, North Carolina, question marks. It's part of his path to 270. He can clearly get there. It's not as big a window as the Trump people wanted, I think, at the beginning of the night.
Yeah, again, it's not what we expected. I mean, certainly if you live in the world that I live in, the media world, the political world, I mean, not many people believe the president had any chance whatsoever. I mean, none. I mean, this was going to be a blue wave. This was going to be an early night. And again, we don't know. It's 8/18. We don't know the outcome. And I think it's always been a pretty tough race for the incumbent president. But it's not what people thought it was last night. And again, you have to ask yourself, why is that? Why is the demonstrated reality so different from what purportedly smart people said it was going to be? And again, I don't know the answer to that, but we're going to have mountains of data. This is the second election in a row that people paid to get it right apparently got it wrong. And I just think it's important to learn from your mistakes, and I hope that we do. I really do, and take them seriously. Like, well, how do we screw it up? We, in effect, lied to people. How did that happen?
You know, with the Hispanic vote, Tucker, when I look across the tabs on a number of states, it looks like the president, and this is obviously very early looking at this data, it looks like he's doing better with Hispanics than with African-American voters, at least in the states that we have seen coming in so far, and that could change throughout the evening. But you know what everybody, the sort of conventional wisdom on Florida is, oh, well, that's just the Cuban vote, and Cubans are Republicans. That's what we've been hearing over and over again. Do you think that holds up to be true, or do you see this Hispanic trend being broader than that across the country?
Well, I mean, I would just say two things. Again, Donald Trump did better in Florida, in Miami-Dade, 70% Hispanic county this year than he did 4 years ago. Florida is actually less Cuban. The Hispanic population of Florida is, I mean, just to be precise about it, since you ask, is less Cuban than it was 4 years ago. And it is a very diverse community. I mean, not everyone we call Hispanic is, from the same culture, has the same views, obviously. And we should always be clear about that and not pretend that all people of any group are the same, because they're definitely not. I just think it's interesting that the emphasis from the leaders of the Democratic Party for months has been on race and racism, and the conversation we've been having as a country has been about racism. You would expect, and their intent, of course, the whole point of this was to affect political outcomes. It's really remarkable, no matter what the final result is, that this president, specifically this one, denounced every day as a racist, is doing better with non-white voters. And again, I do think that the BLM message is clearly very appealing to a lot of white suburban voters. It's clearly very unappealing to a lot of non-white voters. Who expected that?
Yeah, we've got a call real quick. Stand by, Tucker. President Trump will win the state of Indiana, home state to Vice President Mike Pence. We can make that call. The Fox News decision desk projecting that the president, will win Indiana. Tucker, you mentioned BLM earlier. Britt Hume talked about all the boarding up of Manhattan and Georgetown, kind of getting ready. And we're in a different place in this country.
We are in a different place, and I guess what I'm struck by is how readily and passively we've accepted it. I mean, this is a great and free country filled with courageous and decent people. Why for a second would we put up with the assumption that we need to hunker down and protect ourselves from violence on an election day? It's very distressing, and it's not a partisan point at all. I'm just saying that as someone who's lived in this country for 51 years. We shouldn't have to fear violence. We should be brave in the face of threats. And it is something very kind of bewildering and sad to see that. And you just hope that your children and your grandchildren won't grow up in a country where it's taken for granted that you need to hide inside or arm yourself or close the liquor stores or put plywood over your windows on election day. That is the rule in the third world. I've covered elections in disordered, violent countries, and everyone does what they're doing in Georgetown, where I partly grew up, by the way. I know the neighborhood very well. Everyone does that in a lot of other countries. You don't want that here, and I don't know exactly what the answer is. And again, I'm not making a partisan point. There are certainly partisan points to be made, but I'll skip it on election night. I want to make it a point as an American, which is that's not acceptable. You don't want to live in that country, and whatever it takes to fix that, we should do. I think it probably begins with the expectations of our leaders. Violence is never an acceptable or legitimate form of political expression, ever. And I don't care what they say on Twitter. I don't care what they suggest from the podium. That is totally wrong, and we should never put up with it, for real.
Yeah, unfortunately, it was too slow an evolution to come to that conclusion over the course of the summer. And we saw things sort of, allowed in places like Portland and Seattle. And that sort of set the tone for what we then saw in all of these other cities. And then Democrats started to play catch up, Tucker, at the DNC when they saw some numbers coming back that showed, no, actually, Americans do not want to get to the point where they go, oh, yeah, I guess, you know, we're going to board up the windows again for whatever's coming down the pike. It's not normal, as you aptly point out.
No, and the assumption behind it is just so poisonous that people of a certain color or poor people like violence or will accept violence. No, all people, no matter what they look like or no matter what they make, despise disorder, chaos, violence. It's a threat to the things they care about most, their families. It's always wrong. The law and order, not repression, but law and order, literally order. These are laws, we obey them. This is order. We stay within these lines because we've learned over thousands of years we need to if we want to preserve society. That message resonates with everybody, everyone. Every human being wants that. And I don't know why we've gone through this kind of mass psychosis where both parties kind of lost faith in that. But it's always true in every country, in every moment. And I do think the results tonight, when you disaggregate them, when you break out the numbers, you will see that a lot of voters who wouldn't have voted for Trump under any other circumstance may have voted for him tonight because they were really horrified by what they saw in our cities over the summer.
Trump, if President Trump loses tonight,
yes,
why would he lose?
He would lose partly, I believe, well, probably many reasons. And, you know, if he loses, I mean, I always tell my children this, when you lose, blame yourself first. You know, don't blame other people. Blame yourself first. I think that's morally important for all of us, not just for politicians. But I would say there are a lot of reasons, and they're obvious. I do think the coronavirus, the administration's response to it, also the political uses of it, it was used as a partisan cudgel, had an effect. I think the general feeling that things are out of control, and I actually don't think that's primarily the president's fault, but we could debate it. It doesn't matter. The incumbent will always suffer if people feel like, wow, you know, what's going on? Why doesn't someone restore order? This is scary. I don't know. The future makes me anxious. That feeling will always hurt the guy who's up for re-election, because every election, and any strategist will tell you, is a very simple question. Do you want more of the same, or do you want something different? And in a time of anxiety, people instinctively say, I want to change the channel. I want something different. So it's probably a bunch of different things, but I think the theme is what I just said.
And if he wins, conversely.
And if he wins, of course it'll be, look, I don't like what's happening now, but these people are really scary. I mean, they're really scary. Really? Look, Republicans held both the legislative branch and the executive for 2 years in 2016. And they didn't make that many changes, but they made no structural changes. They didn't change the system at all. We're looking, if there's a Democratic sweep, at Democrats in the first year changing the Electoral College, changing the voting age, changing the number of states we have, changing the Supreme Court. I mean, changing the fundamentals, changing our system itself. And I think most people, even Democrats, are conservative, small c conservative, and they fear radical change. So this is like a pretty good country, actually, despite its faults. Do you really want to tamper with the formula to overthrow the system that served us for 250 years? I think most people, if you calm down and maybe took Trump out of it, would say, no, I don't really want that. But that's what we could get. And I think it has scared people.
But, Tucker, ironically, Joe Biden, I think, prevailed in the primary because he represented a return to normal. People saying, I would like the establishment back, please. Thank you very much. I was okay with it.
I think that's right.
And in the reality, as you point out, that may or may not be what they end up getting, and they may or may not decide that they actually wanted to go back there. Who knows?
I think that's really smart. And a lot of this, certainly me, I missed this completely, missed what Biden was really about. But you're absolutely right. I mean, in the short term, what happened was all the energy in the Democratic Party was behind Bernie Sanders, and the donor. He really was the popular choice, I would say, in both 2016 and 2020 among Democratic primary voters, and Democratic donors put the kibosh on that. I mean, people like Mike Bloomberg, who just, by the way, spent $100 million in Florida, $5 for every person in the state of Florida. People like that said, no Bernie Sanders. So Biden was the default. And I think, and I've known Biden for 30 years, and anyone who knows him will tell you he's a warm person. Nobody hates Joe Biden personally. I certainly don't. But I don't think the Biden of 1985 is the Biden that we're looking at today.
Tucker, as always, thank you.
Thank you.
Polls closing in just a few minutes.
Keep it here.
Quick break. We'll be right back.
Is that a swing state? Investors, the best hedge is hard assets with low risk and high returns, including steady cash flow. The NRIA Prime Realty Fund pays a 10% monthly distribution plus targeted returns to 21%. Our fund is pro-growth with $1 billion in new construction development backing it. The Fed has plummeted interest rates, so hedge against inflation and receive our free report. Flow with the Fed. Call 201-210-2727.
But that's only the beginning of South Dakota's beauty. Mountain carvings and breathtaking landscapes are just some of what's waiting to be discovered. When the time is right for you, our great places are open for adventure. I'm Governor Kristi Noem. Now more than ever, those great places can bring us together. And I can promise you, it'll be a vacation to remember. To learn how to explore South Dakota safely, visit our website.
All right, everyone, we made it. My job is to help new homeowners who have turned into their parents.
I'm having a big lunch and then just a snack for dinner.
We're using a speakerphone in this store. Is that a good idea? One of the ways I do that is to get them out of the home.
You're looking for a grout brush.
Guard, did he ask for your help?
No.
No. No. We all see it. We all see it.
He has blue hair.
Okay.
Blue.
Progressive can't protect you from becoming your parents, but we can protect your home and auto when you bundle with us.
Keep it coming. You don't know him.
So who climbs ladders to clean their gutters?
Dad, I keep telling you it's dangerous.
Climbing ladders is too dangerous. Leaf Filter puts an end to that.
So how does it work?
Leaf Filter's three-piece system filters out leaves and debris, letting water flow through freely.
Do we need to replace our gutters?
Great question. Leaf Filter could be installed right on top of your existing gutters.
We're sold.
Call 833-LEAF Filter or go to getleaffilter.com for your free gutter inspection and estimate.
This is Joe. He used to have bad breath. Now he uses a capful of TheraBreath Fresh Breath Oral Rinse to keep his breath smelling great all day long. TheraBreath. It's a better mouthwash at Walmart, Target, and other fine stores.
We are Empower Retirement, and we are giving over 9.7 million people the guidance they need to help them pursue the future they imagine, making it easier for them to take action so they can focus on today while saving for tomorrow.
It is now 8:30 p.m. on the East Coast and 7:30 p.m. in Arkansas, the only state where polls close at this point in the evening. Fox News Decision Desk can now project that President Trump will easily defeat former Vice President Joe Biden in the state of Arkansas. Also, polls have now belatedly closed in North Carolina, a must-win state for the president if he's to secure another term. Democrats hope to turn this reliably red state blue, I should say, this year, although it's too early to determine whether those efforts will succeed.
We're also watching the North Carolina Senate race, which could help determine the balance of power, whether Republicans keep control in the Senate. Republican incumbent Thom Tillis facing a strong challenge from Democrat Cal Cunningham. Too early to call that race. Back to Arkansas, we can now project that Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton, who some believe will run for the Republican presidential nomination in 2024, can do so if he chooses from the comfort of his Senate seat. That's because tonight Cotton will win re-election, easily beating a Libertarian challenger, Ricky Dale Harrington. Okay, let's look at the state of Florida. That we're getting a separation here in Florida that seems to be going Donald Trump's way. Again, 29 electoral votes in for Florida, 88% of the precincts in. And if you look at the map, it keeps on populating. But the separation here could get to 3 points. If you look at some of these counties, for example, Palm Beach County, and obviously the president calls that home, 56-43, and just look back at 2016, what the spread was, 57-42. So it's kind of tracking there. But some of these other counties in the I-4 corridor, you see Donald Trump running up the lead. And I think we might be getting close on Florida because the Trump people rightly said that they felt comfortable with it. We're back with the panel. Chris, thoughts?
Well, Hillary Clinton lost by 1.2% in Florida back in 2016. If the current trend continues, Donald Trump will have a bigger victory he'll have a bigger victory than that tonight over Joe Biden. And I know the Trump camp feels, well, if he does well in Florida, then maybe he'll have a bigger margin in Georgia and North Carolina and that march up the Atlantic coast. You know, it's fascinating. Let me also say, though, about Florida, it was almost a must-win state for Donald Trump. Almost any projection of Trump winning tonight, he had to win the 29 electoral votes from in Florida. Biden doesn't need that and wasn't really counting on it, but he hoped to win it, and certainly he campaigned hard, and he sent Barack Obama down there on Monday. So it'll be a disappointment to him, but it isn't a killer the way it would have been had the president lost Florida. You know, I'm looking at our Fox News opinion analysis, and you know, there's some numbers in here that would seem to bode very ill for Donald Trump. When you ask people, are conditions in this country right direction or wrong direction? 62% wrong direction, 38% right direction. When you ask me what's the single most important issue, if it's the economy, overwhelmingly 79-19 for Trump. If you think it's the coronavirus, 74-25 for Biden, and more people, a lot more people think the coronavirus is a bigger issue. So that would seem to indicate that Joe Biden was going to win in Florida, and it looks now, we're not calling it, but it looks like Biden might well lose. And I'm thinking, why? Part of it, I think Tucker put his finger on, that maybe people are frightened of Biden. And, you know, particularly with the talk about socialism, you have Cuban Americans, Venezuelan Americans. President in Florida hit those hard. He's going to turn it into another Castro Cuba. He's going to turn it into another Maduro Chavez Venezuela. I think that had an impact. I think just, you know, in the end, some people just feel more comfortable with Donald Trump as the leader over the next 4 years than with Joe Biden. And then I think something else we haven't talked about enough tonight, ground game. The Trump organization has had an enormous ground game, and just as the president has campaigned in front of a lot of people, they have had people, millions of people, knocking on doors and doing the old-fashioned kind of blocking and tackling of campaigning. The Biden campaign, just as Joe Biden didn't go out and meet with a lot of people and hold big rallies, the Biden campaign was doing a lot more of it virtually and on the phone. And it could conceivably be, at least in Florida, that the old-fashioned way of knocking on doors and neighbors, getting neighbors to go out and vote, may be the difference.
Yeah, just a couple other things to point out here. I'd love to get Britt to weigh in on this. Looking at these voter analysis in Florida, would you say that Joe Biden is a strong leader? 3% say yes. Would you say that Donald Trump is a strong leader? And you've got 86% of those who say yes to that, going with President Trump. Same kind of breakdown that we're seeing in honest and trustworthy. President Trump does not fare well on that, didn't fare well on it in 2016, and yet it looks like people are leaning in his direction regardless of that. They think Joe Biden is very honest and trustworthy, but strong leader seems to be more important.
It does tell you something what people now expect from political leaders, right? That,
really?
That honest and trustworthy wouldn't necessarily be the big bellwether you would imagine. By the way, folks, just to hark back to 4 years ago, and we talked about this on this night.
Here we go.
We've got a minor shift in the betting odds, which were well up over 65% Biden. Now it's 59.2 to 40. So at least some people who have money on the line have begun to think that Mr. Trump has a better chance than they did for many, many, many weeks, because the betting averages didn't move at all. A couple other things, Martha. We've talked about the gender gap. Women outnumber men in this country 50.5% to 49.5%. That's been true for some years now. In this electorate, according to our voter analysis poll, or whatever we're calling it, it's 53-46 in this electorate, women over men, and Joe Biden's winning that cohort by 18 percentage points. Of course, that's it's a national number, so it doesn't necessarily tell you much about the battleground states or anything like that. But it's something to keep an eye on through the night, because women are.
We are seeing kind of.
You guys are the majority, Martha, and even more so in this election tonight.
And we are seeing, as expected, the gap in suburban women that was expected. That seems to be showing up in a lot of these states as well. Dana?
Well, actually, I was just looking at New Hampshire because we haven't called that yet, and we said we're waiting on it, as Bill mentioned earlier. Well, one of the things there is you have the split, as Britt has pointed out, women voting at 51% to men at 48%, a little bit closer than usual, but going for Biden 61 to 37. And New Hampshire was one of those states that from the beginning, President Trump only lost it by just a tiny amount
3,000
in
votes
2016, or 2,700 votes. So that was one that you would think that they could have picked up. And the way, if things get real tight here and you need, 4 electoral college votes to get you to 270, there is that. I also wanted to point out on Florida, I think, the fact that the president went back over and over again, he never tired of going there. He would hold rallies there, but Chris mentioned the ground game, but also think of how many new registered voters that the Republicans had over the Democrats in Florida. It was a really big deal. I also think that the handling of Governor DeSantis of COVID seems to go well with how they think that the economy went. When President Trump 2 years ago said, America will never be a socialist country, and then he went back over and again to the Cubans, to the Venezuelans, and it's not like we don't have real-time examples of what's happening in Venezuela, because we do. The other thing is you have to remember the boat parades. And as you saw, Brett, sure. I mean, there was enthusiasm. People were trying to figure out, okay, we can't gather in large groups, but how can we show our enthusiasm? And maybe there was something to it.
Yeah, I mean, Congressman Mike Waltz, a mutual friend of ours, Republican, going for re-election and cruising to that. He was down there for a number of rallies and said the enthusiasm in Florida was real. Juan, as you look at the other numbers we're seeing, are Democrats worried about inner cities like Atlanta, like Columbus, Cleveland? Are you hearing concern about turnout in some of those big cities in the battleground states?
Well, I think that you have to focus here, and if you focus in on Philadelphia, which has been primary, as we saw in the last few days of campaigning, so far they're not concerned. They're feeling pretty good about that. But I just wanted to go back to Florida for a second and talk about that Latino vote, Brett, because, I mean, if you look at that right now, what you're seeing in Florida, according to our numbers, is it's about 17% of the electorate in Florida was Latino. And you see among Latino men, it's 59-39 for Biden. Among Latino women, who are 9%, the majority of the Latino vote, 64-33. So Biden wins, but the margin of victory is markedly less than what we saw going back to 2016. In that time, we saw Clinton winning 62% of Latino men, 68% of Latino women. What we're seeing today, again, is Biden with about 59 among the Latino men, 64 among the Latino women. So the margin has shrunk decidedly, going from about 37, 40% now down to about a 20, 23% margin in terms of the Latino vote. Again, the success that President Trump had with the Latino voters in Florida, I think, is a key element in what he's doing. We also have to talk a little bit about, at some point, how he's doing with black men, which has been a big discussion. It had been a big focus going back to the State of the Union through the conventions for the Trump campaign, hoping even recently with some of these rappers coming into the White House, embracing the president, that he could sway black men to come with him. But, again, it's really about black women who have turned out, and they've been strong for Biden in the states that we've seen so far. 92% in Virginia, 94% in Georgia, 95% in North Carolina, 93% in Florida. It's in Florida, obviously the case, more Latinos than blacks, but it's the strength of black women that it seems to me is pushing what Brit Hume is talking about with the differential. You see more non-white women pushing towards Biden.
Let's get Karl Rove here. Karl, your thoughts on what we're seeing develop here tonight in Florida?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, of full disclosure, I think one of the big issues here is voter registration. I say full disclosure because I was involved in a nationwide voter registration program in 13 states that allow online registration. Think about this. 2016, there were a total of the Republicans were 340,000 below the Democrats. Today, they're about 130,000 below the Democrats. That's the smallest margin between Democratic and Republican registrations in like 30 some odd years. And Florida was a much smaller state with a much less of a population for that long ago. And this has to be factored into it, and we may be seeing that tonight. Sumter County, for example, where the villages are, has both grown in population and grown in importance as a result. and it's full of seniors. The Villages is a senior retirement community with about 10 different or 12 different sort of installations or components of it. And today, Trump has been winning that county with about 90% of the vote in by better than 2-1, significantly above where he was 4 years ago. I suspect that's in part a sign of what the movement into Florida has done and what the changing nature of the Florida electorate is like.
Hey, Carl, I want to ask one thing. Just interrupt you real quick. We talked about this earlier tonight, and I just want to bring it up now. In all of these states, you have absentee ballots requested, and then absentee ballots, according to the secretaries of state, that come back, that have been returned. In Florida, as of this afternoon, you had the requested at more than 6,004,000. As of this afternoon, 4,649,000 of those ballots had been returned. We're trying to get an update for tonight. Is that an issue if the separation in some of these states fits below that number?
Yeah, well, yes, there are some people who just decide not to vote. The bigger number come from people like myself. I was planning to do a mail-in ballot, got my ballot at the house, and then decided my wife went and voted at the early vote location in Texas, and she said, look, like a breeze, walk in, walk out. Well, I went there, I took my ballot, ran it through the shredder, went to the early voting location. If I'd shown up with it, it would have taken me maybe 10 minutes to do the whole thing. Surrender my blue ballot, sign one form, and then go. Instead, by not having it with me, I had to spend 20 minutes, and I'm a provisional ballot. But that's the way a lot of people handle it. They just get rid of the ballot or turn the ballot in and end up voting in person.
I don't know if an angel is landing or what's happening there, but somebody's
It's a wonderful life.
Yeah, it's a wonderful life. 4.737 cast so far, but some of these states, we should point out, extended the deadline for those ballots to come in, and there's different statewide rules, like Pennsylvania, where you don't even have to have a postmark or a signature on the envelope. Okay, we're minutes away from getting our first look at Arizona and Michigan, Wisconsin, a host of other states. But first, a quick look at where the race stands now. President Trump has a total of 73 electoral votes in his column. Joe Biden has 91 so far tonight.
Let's check in with the campaign's Peter Doocy is at the Biden headquarters in Wilmington, Delaware. But we begin with John Roberts, who is at the White House. That's where President Trump is tonight, watching as these results come in. John, what's the mood with the campaign tonight?
Martha Brett, good evening to you. Of course, the campaigns will always tell you that they're optimistic, but they are actually very optimistic here at the Trump campaign, and folks here at the White House as well, believing that the president is poised to win this. You heard Karl Rove a moment ago talking about the Villages and how it's going for President Trump. I was at a campaign event, his last one at the Villages. It was a week ago last Friday. There were thousands of people there. The enthusiasm really was off the charts. But as importantly, President Trump really does seem to be performing much better with Hispanic voters in Florida this year than he did back in 2016. And when you talk about enthusiasm as well, he had an event in Opa-locka, Florida, a couple of days ago. 12,000 people were there. So I was talking to somebody from the Trump campaign a short time ago. They believe that Florida is a lock for them. They're just waiting for the official call. More difficult is what's going on in Pennsylvania. They believe that they're going to do well there. I was in Scranton, the Scranton area yesterday. A lot of enthusiasm there. They might win it tonight, but then there's this concern about 3 days of counting ballots thereafter. Those ballots will be counted but segregated. Anything that comes in after 8 o'clock tonight that could be potentially the focus of a legal challenge, but that all depends on what happens tonight. If Joe Biden were to run away with it, clearly there wouldn't be a challenge, or if President Trump were to run away with it, there likely wouldn't be a legal challenge, so we'll still have to wait to see. Other than that, the campaign feeling good about Arizona, Texas, Georgia, North Carolina, Iowa, and Ohio. There's some thought that the president could flip Nevada, the idea being that casino workers and other service workers are concerned about more coronavirus lockdowns under a Biden presidency, and the fact that that might actually cause some of the casinos and hotels to go under. Might they come out for President Trump? And then there's Minnesota. They think they have a chance there. It hasn't gone red since 1972. Even Ronald Reagan, in his 49-state sweep in 1984, couldn't pick off Minnesota. But the Trump campaign cautiously optimistic that they might be able to do it tonight. We'll wait and see. Basically, the president says we're looking good all over the country. Time will tell. And I know that's a cliche, but it's true tonight. Martha?
up here. And that vote, as we said, early vote going for Joe Biden in Ohio. There was confidence, though, in the Trump campaign about the situation on the ground in Ohio, right?
Yeah, and of course, early voting tends to favor Democrats, but they believe as the numbers start to come in that things will turn around. They really do believe that Ohio is going to go into the win column for them. But this idea of if Florida is called, I mean, clearly it's not going to affect the vote because the vote's already been taken, but it certainly will be a big psychological boost for the Trump campaign.
Yeah.
All right, John, thank you.
It's worth pointing out that Florida started counting weeks ago. So they may be one of the states that in the battleground category that has perhaps the most efficient process that we're going to see tonight. So we do expect that we're going to be able to make, some call on Florida tonight.
They were afraid of 2000.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
remember Tallahassee.
They want to make sure they've got it, all those I's dotted and T's crossed. Our thanks to John. We'll go back to him later tonight. Peter Doocy is also with us. He's live where he has spent quite a bit of time over the past several months in Wilmington, Delaware, covering the Biden campaign. Peter, what are you hearing from their side tonight?
Well, right now, Martha, we're not hearing anything at the Biden HQ. It is very quiet, as you can see, because the 300 cars that have been queued up and swept nearby for a drive-in event tonight have not been let in. So it is kind of a surreal scene where we do expect to see Joe Biden if he has anything to say. We have heard from the Biden team that nothing has changed as of right now from the last time that they ran through their numbers with us this morning, when they were confident enough to say that they thought they had a path to victory even if they did not win in Pennsylvania, Florida, Ohio, or Texas. So as of right now, the way that they see things, that still has not changed. They think that a lot of they're also telling us that a lot of what they think they're hearing from the Trump campaign is platitudes, and that if the Trump campaign really thinks that they have a pathway to 270, or at least as many pathways to 270, that they should show their work. As for Joe Biden, we understand that he is at home right now. He is somebody who is not big on Twitter. He has said many times over the course of the campaign that if he becomes the president, we don't have to worry about his tweets. He is somebody that gets a lot of his information over the phone. It's been reported that during the campaign, or rather during the pandemic in the campaign, he has spent as many as 7 hours on the phone with different lawmakers and with advisors. Some of those are standing calls. Some of them are just based on things that are breaking hour by hour. And also something that was interesting just in terms of what he might be doing as all this, as his whole world may be getting ready to change. The other day we were in Warm Springs, Georgia after an event, just staring at the motorcade, which we spend a lot of time doing when we're trying to shout a question. And we saw his granddaughter Finnegan get out of one car in the back and go up to the armored SUV where Biden was sitting and hand him a cell phone to show him something. And so we know that he is watching the returns with family. He usually doesn't have a lot of people around, but it is a family effort to make sure that the Democratic nominee is fully briefed on whatever is going on. Martha?
Peter, thank you very much.
More than a dozen states, including some of the most consequential of this 2020 election, set to close their polls in just a few minutes. We'll get our first look at those results just moments from now. Keep it here.
One day.
From reimagining the way you work to reassessing what you need, you've changed the way you do business. And now, so have we. With no annual contracts and flexible internet and voice solutions, you'll have what you need to get back to business. Rethink, reconnect, reimagine. Switch to Cox Business today.
Being a kid doesn't always feel great. When it's just pain and no fever, give them natural pain relief. Highlands is a kinder way to care for kids. Claims based on traditional homeopathic practice, not accepted medical evidence, not FDA evaluated.
And when I took that one step, everything changed. In that moment, I don't know if I knew if I was going to make it or not.
Inside the fight for recovery and drive to overcome any obstacle.
I didn't lose my legs. I was given a second chance at life. You can be the resentment of war, or you can be the resilience of war.
Watch A Live Day, Johnny Joey Jones, available now on Fox Nation. Get a copy of Sean Hannity's new book when you join today. Go to foxnation.com for details. During this season of gratitude and goodwill, we honor America's heroes.
Love of country, recognition of service.
From the front lines to the front door.
You know, they had our backs.
What this is really about is veterans helping other veterans.
This month, we celebrate America and pay tribute to our American patriots. All November on Fox Nation. Subscribe now and we'll make a donation to the Independence Fund. Plus, Patriot Plan subscribers will receive a copy of Pete's new book, Modern Warriors.
Democracy means freedom. If you don't like it, we can change it. It just matters how you vote.
Democracy 2020, it's in your hands.
The Second Amendment First Responders Program. This program seeks to actively engage Americans who want to protect our Second Amendment rights. Please text PROTECT 2A to 474747 and become a Second Amendment First Responder. Now is the time to defend our right to keep and bear arms. Text PROTECT 2A to 474747. Again, text PROTECT 2A to 474747. Now is the time to defend our right to keep and bear arms. Text PROTECT 2A to 474747.
All right, a Fox News election alert. We want to give you the probability in these states. Remember what we talked about at the beginning of our broadcast, and the probability meter takes into account the voter analysis survey plus the raw vote total that's coming in. Our decision desk in Florida can say that Florida is 93% a probability, not a certainty, that it's going to go to Donald Trump. They haven't made the call as of yet. Flip that over to North Carolina, where we are still getting the vote coming in. 89% probability for Biden in North Carolina, and that is really worth digging into about what is happening in the state of North Carolina.
73% in. Let's go to Bill Hemmer and get a look at some of these counties and some of the breakdown in North Carolina tonight, Bill.
2020, what's up is down, right? What's down is up. I mean, how many times we've been doing these elections when the raw numbers come in and you really start to see the trend. This year, however, we caution our viewers the early vote skews blue. And then you get the in-person vote. Here's a very good example of that. North Carolina, you're about 75%, 73 at the moment, 73% of the vote counted. Joe Biden with a slight lead here. And you look at these counties here, largely rural in the eastern part of North Carolina. Watch this here from 4 years ago. They were all red. So I would expect a little more votes to come in here and keep that vote very close here in North Carolina. We'll see which way it breaks. I think, guys, you can poke through this map in North Carolina. You can find good news for Joe Biden. You can find good news for Donald Trump as well. So we'll continue to watch that flow in. I'm keeping a close eye on Ohio. Just a little more than half of the vote in right now, and Joe Biden a 10-point lead. Do we really think Ohio is a 10-point lead for Joe Biden? Probably not. Campaigns virtually ignored Ohio. When was the last time that happened in a national campaign? In fact, Joe Biden went to Cuyahoga County, which is Cleveland, just the other day. It was like a drive-by pretty much. He came by there in the early afternoon and then went back to Pennsylvania. So Ohio at the moment still has a lot of vote to tally. And I would make the case, guys, that you can dribble around this map here in Ohio, too, and find good news for Donald Trump in the offing and find good news for Joe Biden as well. Here's one. I mentioned this earlier. This is Delaware County. These are the suburbs of a growing Columbus, Ohio, just to the north. This is where our friend John Kasich lives, by the way. You see these numbers for Joe Biden? This is what I would, Martha, you mentioned the suburban vote, how we're tracking that right now. This is where you find it here. Joe Biden by 10 points over Donald Trump. You got a lot of votes in for that county right now. You see how it was flipped 4 years ago? If you're the Trump team, you don't want to see this kind of result right now in 2020. But a few more counties to follow in here. These are largely rural, right along the Ohio River. So I would expect now this to tighten very soon as we look. Let me just pop out here, guys. Sorry, there it is. I would expect this number to tighten over the next hour or two as the in-person votes are cast and tabulated that came into Ohio today. Again, sticking there at 55%. I don't know what the probability meter says in Ohio right now, but I imagine it's pretty close, guys.
Let's go. Do we mind popping into Georgia? And,
Sure can. Yeah.
No, we had that delay in Fulton County, and that is right around Atlanta. That is really a place that Biden has to win big.